Alright guys, so today I've got some issues I can see going on in the lawn, although overall it looks really good. We have had some temperatures in the 90s and the 80s over the past 2 weeks, and so that has caused a couple of problems here in the lawn, and one of those is the appearance of yellow nutsedge. And nutsedge definitely loves the heat, it definitely loves moisture, so anywhere in the lawn that you might have an area that doesn't drain very well, a lot of times you will get the yellow nutsedge that will appear in those areas. So with the combination of the warmer temperatures and the retention of water in certain areas, you may have some problem spots with nutsedge, and I certainly do. So I have a couple of options when it comes to treating the sedge. Now, one thing that does help is that I mow tall, and mowing tall does help shade out the nutsedge and keep the soil cool in those areas. And I do, if you've been following along my videos, I did put down the Hydrotain Moisture Manager, which allows the soil to retain moisture, pulling the humidity and the moisture out of the air and putting it into the soil. So a couple of those are contributing factors. And I didn't really notice that I had the sedge before I put the Hydrotain down, so I'm sure that might have been a contributing factor to that, although there's no science behind that that explanation, so don't put a whole lot of stake in that. But I definitely wanted to treat for the sedge, and so I have a couple of options here. I can treat this by a spray application, or you can simply pull it out of the ground. Now, I will say that you want to avoid pulling it out of the ground, and for a couple of reasons. Is that the nutsedge grows with a tuber, and it has, the reason they call it nutsedge is it has like a hard knot, which is the tuber that's at the bottom of the weed, and unless you pull that tuber out and you completely remove it from the ground, it's going to grow back, and it's going to grow back more aggressively. So to avoid pulling and causing more damage, I'm going to go ahead and do an application of Gordon's Trimec, and this is specifically for nutsedge. This is a fairly inexpensive product. You can find this for, I think it's $12.99 online. Get that from Amazon, do my own. You can usually find this at big box stores, any hardware store, lawn landscape joint. But this is pretty readily available, and this, according to the label, it's safe for northern and southern grasses. They have different application rates depending on where you're at geographically, and then also what type of grass type. I've got a tall fescue lawn here, so my rates are going to be kind of varying depending on the type of application I'm going to do. There are two sets of instructions, one for a hose end sprayer, and then also the other is going to be for a hand pump or a hand can, which is generally the method I like to use because I like to spot spray the weeds. I don't like to blanket an application if I don't really need to. It's just a waste of the chemical, and it's a waste of money. So I'm going to be spot spraying Gordon's Trimec on the nutsedge. Now, it does take a couple of applications to completely get rid of it. You want to go ahead and get an application and spray the nutsedge, and then come back a week or two later and spray it again to completely get rid of it. Although, I'm not going to spray this today, although if I were going to, in my hand can, you want to use 2.5 ounces. If you have a cool season lawn, you use 2.5 ounces per gallon, and you go around and spot spray. I don't have a huge sedge problem. I only have it in a couple of concentrated areas, so I'm actually just going to do a half gallon of water, and I'm going to split the rate down to 1.25 ounces in my hand can sprayer. But as you can see, my lawn is ready for a mow. I'm a little bit long right now, and I'm due for some fertilizer, so I'm going to skip the application of Gordon's Trimec today. I'm going to go ahead and mow this, and I'm going to go ahead and put my fertilizer down. And then I'm also due for irrigation tomorrow morning. I have my schedule set to water on Friday morning. So today is Thursday. I'm going to mow, fertilize, water, and the combination of those three things should cause the sedge to pop up. Now, if I'm mowing every 3 or 4 days, you definitely want to wait a couple of days after spraying your sedge with Gordon's if you want to be able to get the leaf blades to really absorb the chemical and get it down into the root zone, or where the tuber is. So the plan is to go ahead and get this mowed, feed it with the fertilizer, water it really well so I can get the sedge to outgrow the turf. That way when I spray it, I get the full effect of the chemical, and then by the next time I'm ready to mow, I don't have to worry about any loss of residual or the efficacy of the product getting down into the root zone. So with that, let's go ahead and let's mow. Let's get the X green down, and then in a couple of days we'll go ahead and we'll get the Gordons out on the nutsedge, and we'll see how it does after a few days of being applied. I could be a little bit biased, but I think we're looking pretty good right about now, given the temperatures that we've had in the last couple of weeks. I do think the color is holding on really strong, and I've noticed that there's a few other lawns in the neighborhood. As I walk the dog, I'll notice that they start to check out. I see some localized dry spots, maybe a little bit of stress from, maybe the cultural practices aren't quite there, the watering, and maybe a little bit of over-fertilizing. So 2 weeks in on the hydrotane, I think that, actually not quite 2 weeks, just a little bit over a week on the hydrotane, I think I'm already starting to see some dividends from that application. So we're looking really good here as far as color, and no signs of stress really to speak of. So now that we've got the mow done, we got the fertilizer in, I'm going to wait a couple of days until the nutsedge starts to outgrow the turf. We'll go ahead and hit it with a spot spray application of the Gordon's Trimec, and we'll pick it up from there. All right, morning everybody, welcome back. Today is Saturday. The last time we were in the lawn looking at the sedge was Thursday afternoon. Went ahead and got a mow, and let's go take a look and see if the nutsedge has come back. So we definitely have the nutsedge coming back in. I don't know if you can see from the angle that I'm at, in these low-lying areas that retain moisture, the sedge has definitely returned. Here's a better example of that. So here's some nutsedge sticking up right here. We also have a little bit kind of right up along the sidewalk where it heats the soil up a lot more. than it would, you know, say in the middle of the yard. So we do have a little bit of yellow nutsedge coming in right here. So my biggest trouble areas are sort of in this area where we have poor drainage, and then also in this area here too, where it does dip down a bit. So eventually I'm going to have to come out and do a little bit of leveling at some point. And then you can see I've got a little bit of nutsedge in this area here too as well. So overall, it looks like the plan worked by mowing it, keeping it moist, keeping the soil moist, and then also giving a little bit of fertilizer. The nutsedge has definitely outgrown the turf. So now would be a good time to go ahead and get the Gordon's Trimec down so that we can make sure we get that foliar absorption into the nutsedge, and then by the time we're ready to mow again, we should be safe. So let's go ahead and mix up this concoction. Gordon's Trimec is listed as a selective herbicide, so that means it's only going to treat the types of weeds that are listed on the label. It is safe for grass, so totally fine if you overspray onto the turf. It's not going to hurt anything, and it's good to go around and just get a fine mist sprayed all over the problem areas. So wherever you have sedge, just want to give it a fine mist. Get it on the blades. If you go too heavy and you have the liquid run off, you're not going to get as much absorption into the leaf blades. So a fine mist is going to do you just fine. It seems to be more effective. One other thing to note as well too is when I'm spraying out in the lawns, when I'm spraying weeds, I like to just kind of walk in a grid pattern so that I can see overhead where I might have some weeds. Some of that a lot of times can be hidden if you have like a thick turf canopy. Sometimes it can be hard to see the weeds unless you're literally standing on top of them. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just walk in a grid pattern, kind of like I'm spreading fertilizer. I'll go in one direction and then I'll switch and go in another direction so that I can see everything and make sure I get a thorough application of the weeds that I'm trying to treat. So that was pretty much it. Pretty painless application here. Now it's pretty hot. It's early in the morning, and you can see I'm already sweating just from walking the yard and doing some pesticide applications. But if you got a little bit of nutsedge in your yard, don't freak out. It's not a huge deal. Just go out and there are several products you can try. I used the Gordon's Trimec in this video. It's a fairly inexpensive option if it's something that you want to go ahead and do to treat your nutsedge problem, just like I did, just spot spray in certain areas and it'll knock it down over the course of a couple applications. So if I still have some issues with the sedge, I'm going to come out here in a couple weeks and I'm going to hit it again. And that's not to say I'm going to have some new areas pop up because it is going to continue to be hot and I'm irrigated regularly, so I'm always going to have conditions that are prime for nutsedge because it does like the moist soil and it does like the heat. So I did spray in the morning. Now if you're going to do a morning application like I did, wait for the dew to evaporate off of the grass first before you come out and do your application. If you apply with dew in the ground, it's the application's not going to take. You're just going to have to redo it. So with that, I really hope that you guys found this useful, and I appreciate you coming along, and we'll see you next time.